100 videos ago, I sat my girlfriend down and made her play Dark Souls. Plenty has happened along the way, but I think it's safe to say she's learned a thing or two since then. They say the first Souls game you play is always going to feel the hardest, but the question is, if you go back, will it live up to how you remember it? We're going to put that theory to the test and toss her right back in where it all began. And with every Souls game to date at her back, she's more than prepared to take on Lordran. Dark Souls 1 is about to learn a hard lesson and be careful who you pick on in high school, because this time, I made my girlfriend replay Dark Souls.
Dark Souls door open! Ah!
She's been devouring these games for long enough that we may sometimes forget that wasn't always the case. She's always looked back at Dark Souls 1 with a hint of intimidation because it was her initiation to the series, but I had a feeling she was going to surprise herself this time around. It's not a different game, she's just a different player.
Get out of here! Woo!
When she played the first time, she didn't even have a shred of experience to back up her playthrough.
I'm like, I kind of know where I'm going now. This is great.
The whole world melted together and she'd always struggle with her bearings. For instance, the trek down to Blighttown felt like she traveled miles and miles out to sea, and I remember after she rang the second bell how worried she was she'd never find her way back. Where before she was always concerned with not going the wrong way, now she knows there really isn't a wrong way to go.
Thank you.
Not just that, but she went into this playthrough with a plan. With proper direction in Dark Souls, you can very quickly become the apex predator of the game. It may look like she's trapped inside the fog wall with a boss, when in reality, the boss is trapped inside the fog wall with her.
Bye, Taurus Demon.
But she didn't start off as a powerhouse. There was plenty of prep before she reached her final form for this playthrough, and it hinged on how well she could leverage what she's learned in the other games.
Nice.
I will say, her first go in Lordran, she had to take in much smaller bites. She'd only be able to stomach 30 minutes at a time because the world was so dark and dreary and the game so punishing she couldn't handle not taking a break. Every minute in the game stretched into years in her head, and no matter how far she thought she'd gotten, progress was always at a crawl.
Hello.
For comparison's sake, she sat down to replay the first day and didn't stop until she had the Lord Vessel. Granted, there was a lot less wandering around this time, but relative to her first journey, I think she's learned to stomach the poison of failure.
There goes my humanity.
The jump back in time to the original game had its jarring moments. Outside of Demon Souls, she's been exclusively using the fast-paced combat of the newer games. It was no shock that a good chunk of her deaths early came from her misjudging how fast or slow something was.
Chain backstab, baby, let's go.
The heavy movement didn't do her any favors in avoiding getting caught in the awkward environments either. That's the problem with going back to Dark Souls 1 after playing so much Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne. Your light roll feels about as good as a heavy roll in the later titles.
No! That looked a lot worse than it was.
Her nihilistic attitude towards keeping her souls is somewhat contrary to the gameplay loop of these games. When she first picked up souls, she was like everyone else, eager to protect them and careful to always run and pick them back up. As she's played these games more and more, she started to realize she doesn't really care about hanging on to them. Can she equip her weapon? If yes, then souls get dumped into whatever stat she's feeling at the moment.
It's one thing to like lose how pretty I look, but it's another to lose all these souls if I can level. I never thought I'd say that. Really? I'm so close. Whatever, I don't need a level.
She used to stress about them a lot more, but at this point she's proven to herself that she's capable of finding more. In the past, when she'd lose them, I'd assure it wasn't the end of the world, as there were most certainly people that had beaten the game at a lower level than she was. I can't remember exactly when it happened, but at some point in time she started laughing it off when she'd lose a boatload of souls. Nowadays, losing souls is just part of the experience. She doesn't even realize they're gone sometimes.
I couldn't get past. No!
Something about the SL 1+1 challenge changed the two of us for better or for worse. Being able to actually level up meant the weighted vest came off, and consequently, the two of us felt absolutely invincible.
Oh my god, I could level.
Regardless of her newfound superpowers, she's a bit traumatized and still plays super cautiously. It's like she's trapped in the mindset that every boss is gonna one-hit her, so now she plays like she only has one health. Even a boss like Quelaag, which gave her so much trouble back in her first playthrough, was one she got on her first try, which was amazing because she wanted to ring the bells in reverse order this go around, so she went after her right after beating the Asylum Demon.
Yeah!
With the lower belt cleared out, she crawled her way up the scaffolding out of Blighttown and proceeded to absolutely curb stomp the Belfry gargoyles. With the soul gain from Quelaag and Ceaseless, there really wasn't much that could stand in her way, so she pretty much steamrolled her way through the first half of the game. For all the nightmares and headaches that Blighttown caused her, it ended up being a lot shorter and easier than in her memory.
I remember thinking that too my first time. Like, oh shit. I feel like that happened before.
Man, poison sucks.
Like that exact thing happened in the first video, but it was me this time. Damn it.
That was sort of a theme. Some of her most hated areas turned out to be not so big and bad as she remembered them.
This is like the mega shortcut.
She'd worked up such a scary monster in her head about places like Blighttown and the catacombs, but now that surviving isn't such a big ordeal, she's realizing they're not so bad. Over the past couple of years, when she'd encounter the hellish places in other Souls games, she'd be like, it's not as bad as Dark Souls 1. As it turns out, the monster under her bed wasn't so scary after all. Except for Sen's Fortress.
Sen's Funhouse.
Ma, we're going to Sen's for dinner.
That area is just as dark and confusing as the day she found it.
I just got killed by an elevator.
I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I have to mention that from the very start of the game, she was gunning for Smough.
My hammer.
And you already know she intended to pry her hammer from his cold, dead hands.
Here I go. Shit. Ah! Let's go.
She got her hands on plenty of other great hammers along the way, but nothing was ever going to meet Smough's standards. So apologies in advance to our lovely audience who won't be able to see a damn thing behind that stupid golden drum. But it's back with a vengeance and slower than ever.
I feel like it's even bigger in this one than the other one.
I feel like you're right. Like, I feel like it's bigger than your
It is. It's bigger than my entire body if I was wearing Sigurd's armor.
Ooh. Having the boss's soul was the first step, but she still had to actually craft the hammer. It shouldn't have been that big of a hurdle because the blacksmith that can do it is in Anne Orlando, but leave it to my girlfriend to find a way to make even that an ordeal.
I told you. Me, Andre, and the Giant are all friends.
She may have let the ability to warp to bonfires get to her head. Her biggest sin of all was the classic lighting of the bonfire, but not actually sitting at it. This got her into the most trouble. If you weren't aware, in later games, lighting a bonfire is more than enough to spawn at it. In some situations, you might not want to sit down at it because you've got plenty of Estus and don't want to respawn all the enemies. Well, in Dark Souls 1, lighting doesn't do a damn thing besides look cool. You have to actually rest at it for it to become your new checkpoint. She got her heart broken plenty of times from this mistake, but by far the worst was when she forgot to sit at the Princess Chamber bonfire after Ornstein and Smough, and then couldn't warp back when she'd saved up enough souls to make her hammer. She was so excited to make the hammer that she ran straight to the giant blacksmith to see how much it would cost. It was only after she homeward boned to get more materials that she realized she couldn't warp back to the castle.
Which run?
all the way to...
I have to like go up on the roof and stuff? God, what?
Not only did she have to go the long way around past the archers again, but she had to do it without losing her precious souls. Not so nihilistic about them now, are we?
Oh, thank God. Are you kidding me? Really? Really?
To piggyback off of that, creating Smough's hammer required her to engage in the crafting system for once. It would have been a complete disaster without my help explaining stuff, as she used a Twinkling Titanite weapon on her first playthrough and completely bypassed the entire upgrade system. She needed to level up a weapon she wasn't even going to use in order to ascend it. Collecting all the different materials really showed me how unintuitive the system can be for a beginner, and I'm glad they simplified it later in the series.
Are there large green Titanites?
Between all the different kinds of upgrade materials and blacksmiths, the biggest challenge of all was convincing her that investing her upgrade materials into a random club was going to magically turn it into Smough's hammer.
Yay! I have Smough's hammer now!
Adding insult to injury, there's way too many different types of materials to keep track of. This is all made much simpler once she had the boss weapon, but before that she was on the hunt for Titanite shards. After the hammer was finally made, all she needed to upgrade it to its highest level was Demon Titanite, which was pretty straightforward to find and collect. Needless to say, she's built quite the aversion to Titanite demons.
My toes!
With the hammer in hand and the Lord Vessel placed, she was ready to start smashing her way through the Lord Souls. There's just one more thing to mention before we let her go wild. I couldn't just sit by and let her have all the fun to herself, so I did a simultaneous playthrough so we could both share in the excitement. I played the Ornstein to her Smough, and have to say I wasn't really sure how to feel about using a spear. I've always been devoted to ultra great swords, and the game even tried tempting me by giving me my favorite one.
We got him. We got him. And I got the great sword. Oh my god.
But I have to admit, the electric toothpick was a total blast.
Ha! Working as intended.
Since we played through the game in tandem, we got to share in each other's successes and failures.
It's like I made it. It's like, oh, thank God, I don't have to make the jump ever again. It's like, no, actually you do. But if you think about it, I'm going to play this game again, so I would have had to make it again in future playthroughs. So it's kind of like the Chocobo race. Oh, nice. Wow, what a save. Oh, never mind. Yeah, never mind.
In the spirit of playing together and trying new things, I decided to mix it up quite a bit in my own playthrough as well. For one thing, I played through most of the game with an egg on my head because it halved my soul gain and helped her and I stay at a closer level range.
And Pinwheel's dead. Okay. That's what should have happened last time. Oh my god. I just died on Pinwheel turn. Are you kidding me? I'm actually embarrassed. Wow. Accidents are accidents. Don't tell anybody I died on Pinwheel, okay? Mask of the Fall! I can't wear it, though, because I've got this egg.
With that stipulation in place, I realized that I'd be playing through the Tomb of the Giants for the first time ever without the sunlight maggot, since I couldn't wear a helmet.
There might be another one? There is! What the f... That was so scary, dude. I hate not having a light. Oh my god, this is so horrifying. Can we please include a paragraph about, like, Noiki in the dark? This is my last Estus.
So yeah, this is that paragraph. I figured not having the maggot wouldn't be the end of the world since I happened to be using a weapon I could one-hand, but I may have underestimated the dark. I've run through the tomb over a dozen times, but I felt so much more vulnerable this go-around.
Okay. That was so... Taryn, I was literally just stabbing in the dark. I can't tell you how fun this is, but also horrifying.
As a quick side note, I only realized now as I'm recording that I removed the egg for the Mask of the Father, and never once did it occur to me I could wear the sunlight maggot. Although, going through the tomb feeling that oppressive darkness was the most fun I've had in Dark Souls 1 in years, so all's well that ends well, I guess.
It looked really cool. It didn't really do much. It looked great, though.
Throughout our playthrough, we stayed pretty much neck and neck. It wasn't necessarily a race, but there wasn't ever a person who was clearly in the lead either. I think it really shows how much she's grown that she'd pull ahead so often. With that said, I think a majority of my deaths could be attributed to me walking straight off the edge of a cliff because I was busy peeking over at her playthrough.
Nice. Great Vornito! Whoop whoop!
With all her momentum, she rolled up to the kiln of the first flame, ready to link the fire and complete her encore run of this game.
Here we go. I cannot see Gwyn.
There was just one slight miscalculation on her part, though. She couldn't parry Gwyn. Actually, it was less that she couldn't parry, and more that she was too slow to parry.
I literally cannot see a damn thing. Ow.
She had to one-hand her hammer in order to get the parry off, but she wasn't fast enough to two-hand and then land the riposte. What she ended up with was her bonking him with a regular attack, or the occasional awkward one-handed riposte.
Shit.
So she was trapped at a bit of a crossroads here. Not having the easy victory she expected, she had to change her tactics. Running an extremely lumbering and slow build turned out to be a difficult combination with Gwyn's extremely fast and aggressive attacks. With next to no breathing room between swings, this really started to look like Pontiff 2.0. But then she had a breakthrough. Poise. Poise isn't the meme it is in other games, and it actually serves a purpose here. I don't know what her faith stat was, because it was a goddamn miracle she could manage 3 pieces of Havels with that hammer, but the stone ponytail ended up being the key to going up against Gwyn.
Yeah! Oh my god. Woo!
Having succeeded in extending the Age of Fire, her second journey through Lordran is now complete. Well, mostly. But that's a story for another day.